Morning. Spring. There was an odd taste to the air this morning. A fog had settled over the lake I had set camp near. I tried as best I could to light a fire, but the wood I gathered days before seemed to have soaked a bit of the moisture up from the air. So I sat in silence, bundled in a blanket, munching on some of the last bread I had gotten out of Free Mind settlement about a week ago. That settlement wouldn't have been so bad if it wasn't for the fact that half the inhabitants were suspicious of me, a no-named wanderer just showing up at their gates. As for the other half of the settlement, I never got to see them, since I was promptly taken to their jail and interrogated. I was lucky they didn't have any snake oil ways of checking my DNA. I still have scars from other settlements. I can remember seeing someone who failed one of those tests, but it's not a memory I care to recall often. But I guess, for the sake of recording it here in this journal, I can. It must have been months ago. The leaves were just beginning to change their color, and I happened upon this settlement, and like many others, I was promptly imprisoned. To my surprise, I wasn't the only captive. There were two others in the holding cell. One was a young woman, looking severely frightened. She was huddled in a corner. The other was an older man who seemed to have an air of calm around him. Surprising, given the circumstances. Rather than take my possessions from me permanently, they sifted through my meager belongings and threw the bag back into the cell with me. Good thing all my interesting items had been stolen from me at previous settlements. They left us in there for days. The girl, whenever she wasn't mumbling or crying herself to sleep, she would stare at me and the other man with an oddly confused look in her eyes, as if looking for direction from either of us. Once, when she had fallen asleep, the man rummaged through his bags and pulled out a book and began to read. I watched him, not fully sure of what he was doing. He paused and looked up at me. When his eyes met mine, I had to blink. My eyes suddenly felt dry. When I opened them again, he had closed his book and gestured for me to come towards him. I glanced at where the guards would typically be and noticed they were gone. Before I could glance at the woman in the corner, he spoke.
She's sleeping and will continue to do so for a while yet. It's the only thing that seems to calm her troubled mind.
I listened to him speak and looked back at him and felt my eyes were beginning to dry again. While blinking, I realized what he said, answering my curiosity before I could even check for myself. I tried to get up or just back away from this man and found I couldn't. My joints refused to respond to what my mind was telling them to do.
Now,
he said, focusing my newfound terror upon him.
The guards are just in the other room napping. Too much noise will wake them. I'm not that talented of a mentalist as others I've had the pleasure of knowing.
Shit.
David, I know you have a better vocabulary than that.
Shit! I exclaimed, beginning to sweat. At every settlement, it was common to contain newcomers until they were deemed normal and free-minded. Never had I actually been captured with one that wouldn't be considered normal.
Yes. You're right, I am one of those unnormal ones. There's no need to be worried, though. I won't do anything to you.
I felt my joints relax as control was granted back to me. Questions came flooding to my mind. Who was he? Why was he here? And what could he do?
What and why I'm here are more things of my own and not for sharing. Let's just say it wasn't my choice. As for what I can do, you've pretty much experienced the brunt of it. Though if you look at our cellmate, you can see the rest of my abilities.
I turned to face the sleeping figure and noticed a mark on the side of her neck I hadn't seen before. I walked over and drew her hair to the side. It was a black image, some combination of shapes and lines permanently there on the side of her neck. She's a...
Drudge? Yes, a harlequin, in fact. I'm surprised a pharaoh like you would know.
Yours?
No. I never could see the point in having a servant other than being too lazy to take care of things personally. You can call me Fox, by the way.
He continued talking, slowly opening up to the reason why he had been kicked from one of the communes.
Differences in opinion. Unfortunately, my opinion wasn't favored by those in charge. I believed that you pharaohs, pardon the classification, were worth studying. And I think I've come to an end to those studies.
I heard some noise come from the other room. Apparently, someone had stumbled upon the sleeping guards and found they were a little hard to wake.
Here, I want you to have this.
Fox handed me the book he had been reading, and I realized it was just a journal, his studies. The noise in the other room increased. I can't.
No, you're taking it because I no longer have any use for it.
I tried to continue my protest, but Fox placed a finger on his lips. The girl awoke and began to cry. There were shouts coming from the other room.
Quiet. We will continue to communicate this way,
said Fox's voice inside my head.
Just think a response and I'll read it. And please get that look of astonishment off your face. The guards are coming.